Hideo Kojima has said that every Metal Gear game can be encapsulated in a single word. For Metal Gear Solid, that word is gene. At its core, the game explores genetics, not just in the literal sense, but as a lens through which to examine the tension between nature and nurture. It asks profound questions about identity, free will, and whether we're bound by the circumstances of our birth or defined by the choices we make. This theme permeates every aspect of the game, touching on every major character and ultimately shaping Snake's journey from a tool of war to a man seeking a purpose beyond combat. At the heart of Metal Gear Solid lies the rivalry between Solid Snake and Liquid Snake, two clones of Big Boss who are locked in a conflict that epitomizes the theme of Gene. Genetically identical, yet vastly different in personality and outlook. Their battle is not just physical, but philosophical, a clash over identity, destiny, and the meaning of their shared heritage. Liquid's resentment defines his entire existence. Believing he was engineered as the inferior clone, he grows to despise both Big Boss and Solid Snake, seeking to surpass them both to prove his worth. This belief that his very DNA relegates him to a lesser status fuels his rage and shapes his obsession with power and domination. Snake, on the other hand, is blissfully unaware of the genetic tampering that shaped him. He views himself as a soldier, nothing more, nothing less. Unlike Liquid, Snake's ignorance allows him to avoid being consumed by bitterness. Yet, as the game progresses, Snake is forced to confront the same questions Liquid wrestled with his entire life. Am I nothing more than a tool? Am I destined to follow the path laid out by my genes? For all their differences, Snake and Liquid are strikingly similar. Both are products of war shaped by the battlefield. Snake admits that he only feels alive when he's fighting, a sentiment Liquid shares. Both men see combat as intrinsic to their identities, yet they respond to this realization in opposite ways. Liquid embraces it fully, reveling in his role as a warrior and seeking to create a world of perpetual conflict where he can thrive. Snake, however, begins to question his place in this cycle of violence, grappling with the possibility of a life beyond war. Liquid's anger at Big Boss further highlights their shared struggle. He views Big Boss as a symbol of the system that created him and seeks to surpass him as an act of defiance. Meanwhile, Snake, though disconnected from any familial attachment to Big Boss, is unknowingly following in his footsteps. Both men are trying, in their own ways, to escape the shadow of their father. Through Liquid, the game poses a haunting question to Snake and the player. What does it mean to be human in the face of manipulation and control? Liquid represents one possible answer: unwavering adherence to the idea that he is a tool of war destined to fight and destroy. Snake's journey, in contrast, becomes one of finding a new answer, rejecting that destiny and forging his own path, not as a soldier, but as a person. Liquid's declaration that he's Snake's shadow is a moment of profound insight. He does represent the darkest parts of Snake's identity, the bloodlust, the nihilism, and the unrelenting drive to fight. Yet Snake's journey through the game is one of rejecting this shadow. Through his interaction with others, Snake begins to see that his life doesn't have to be dictated by the same forces that shaped Liquid's. The Foxhound members, also known as the Sons of Big Boss, each highlight the theme of nurture over nature. Ironically, none of them share Big Boss's genetics, except Liquid, yet they all revere Big Boss in different ways. Vulcan Raven, for instance, fought under Big Boss during Outer Heaven and remained loyal to his ideals. Ocelot's bond with Big Boss was personal and will be elaborated on more in future videos. Sniper Wolf found purpose in Big Boss after a tragic childhood as a Kurdish refugee, seeing him as the family she lacked. In stark contrast, Liquid, Big Boss's literal clone, despises him. This dynamic underscores how upbringing shapes identity just as powerfully as genetics. The Foxhound unit's backstories mirror Snake's internal conflict. Take Psycho Mantis, whose abusive upbringing and hatred for his father led him to kill him. Manipulated for his psychic abilities, Mantis rebelled against governments and embraced mass murder as his purpose. Mantis even sees Snake as worse than himself, accusing Snake of killing without reason, driven only by orders. Snake doesn't disagree. This is the very conflict he grapples with throughout the game. Similarly, Sniper Wolf's life was defined by tragedy. As a Kurdish child in Iraq, she endured a brutal upbringing until Big Boss gave her purpose, to become a soldier. From that moment, her rifle became her voice, a mirror to Snake's journey as a tool of war. Dr. Naomi Hunter is another key figure in the narrative. Naomi's life has been shaped by questions of identity. Orphaned as a child, she found family in her adopted brother, Gray Fox, as well as Big Boss himself. But this chosen family came with its own traumas, as Naomi's search for belonging led her to obsess over her own genetic origins. Her work in genetic engineering reflects this obsession. She seeks answers in DNA, believing that it holds the key to who we are and why we exist. Yet, despite her expertise, Naomi's longing for identity through genetics only leaves her with more questions. Naomi's creation of Fox Dye, a genetic weapon designed to kill specific individuals based on their DNA, is the game's most literal manifestation of its theme. Snake carries this weapon within him, a constant reminder of how his genetics have been weaponized. Yet Naomi's story is more than a scientific exploration of genetics, it's an emotional journey of reconciliation. Throughout the game, Naomi grapples with her desire for revenge against Snake, whom she blames for Gray Fox's suffering and Big Boss's death. But by the end, she begins to see beyond her obsession with genetics and vengeance. Naomi's journey parallels Snake's own. Their conversations throughout the game push both characters toward a shared understanding. Identity is forged in action, not biology. In her final message to Snake, she encourages him to live for the present rather than being defined by his past or his genetic code. This mirrors her own growth as she learns to accept life as it is rather than what she wished it could be. Meryl Silverberg's story also explores identity and choice. Like Snake, Meryl initially believed that her path as a soldier is predetermined by her lineage. As she believes she is the niece of Roy Campbell, Meryl views her role as a soldier not just as a career, but as an inevitability. Both Meryl and Snake are shaped by their circumstances, but their attitudes toward their roles in life could not be more different at the start of the game. Meryl enters the battlefield with a sense of purpose, while Snake has grown cynical and detached, viewing war as a necessary evil. Meryl's belief in the possibility of a better world challenges Snake's worldview. Her determination to find meaning in her actions, even in the face of overwhelming odds, stands in stark contrast to Snake's resignation. This difference is highlighted during their conversations, where Meryl often questions Snake's motives and challenges him to see the bigger picture. Yet, their similarities are undeniable. Both are trapped by the expectations placed on them, Snake by his genetic engineering and Meryl by her family legacy. Meryl's journey to find her own identity outside of being Campbell's niece mirrors Snake's struggle to define himself beyond being a clone of Big Boss. Meryl's capture and near-death experience at the hands of Sniper Wolf is a turning point for Snake's character. Even in the face of death, she clings to her idealism, encouraging Snake to keep fighting and not to lose hope. This moment profoundly affects Snake. Watching Meryl's unyielding spirit forces him to confront his own apathy. For perhaps the first time, Snake begins to see the value in fighting for something beyond survival. Meryl's journey demonstrates that lineage is not destiny. By the end of the game, she begins to realize that her worth is not tied to being a soldier, but to the choices she makes and the values she upholds. Ultimately, Meryl becomes a symbol of hope for Snake. Her idealism, bravery, and determination remind him that there is more to life than war. Her willingness to fight for something she believes in, even when it nearly cost her her life, shows Snake that purpose can be found not in blindly following orders, but in choosing a cause worth fighting for. Otacon represents another layer of the gene theme in Metal Gear Solid, though his struggle takes a different form. Unlike Snake, whose genetics were designed for war, Otacon grapples with the moral legacy of his family's contributions to destruction. His work on the Metal Gear project, though initially intended for peaceful applications, becomes a tool of mass violence, mirroring a cycle of harm that has plagued his lineage. Otacon's story is one of accountability. He chooses to take responsibility for his role in enabling the horrors of the Metal Gear program, refusing to hide behind excuses of ignorance or good intentions. This accountability sets him apart from others in the story, including Snake, who for much of the game avoids reflecting on his own role in perpetuating cycles of violence. Otacon's desire to break that cycle speaks to his growth as a character and to his influence on Snake. Rather than accept the inevitability of destruction as a result of his work, Otacon actively seeks to undo the harm he's caused. He joins Snake in opposing Metal Gear not just as an act of redemption, but as a conscious rejection of the idea that his life must be defined by his mistakes. This attitude begins to challenge Snake's own perspective. Otacon's refusal to let the past define him serves as a mirror to Snake's struggle with his own identity and destiny. His technical expertise, moral clarity, and unwavering commitment to stopping Metal Gear help guide Snake towards a goal greater than just completing the mission. Together, they form an unlikely but effective partnership, bound not by genetic similarity, but by a shared desire to make a difference in the world. One of the most unexpected and poignant aspects of Otacon's role is how he helps Snake confront the idea of love. For a man like Snake, love has always been a foreign concept. His life as a soldier has left little room for emotional connections, and his self-perception as a killer rather than a person has made the idea of love seem unattainable. Otacon's willingness to embrace vulnerability, his feelings for Sniper Wolf, even in the face of tragedy, strikes a chord with Snake. It shows him that even in a world of violence and conflict, love can exist, and it is something worth fighting for. This influence manifests in Snake's evolving relationship with Meryl. While Snake initially tries to keep her at arm's length, afraid to acknowledge his feelings, his bond with Otacon helps him see that emotional connection isn't a weakness, it's a strength. a reason to keep going even when the odds seem insurmountable. In many ways, Otacon embodies the hope that genetics and past mistakes don't have to define a person's future. Together, Otacon and Snake form not just a partnership, but a friendship built on mutual growth. Otacon's optimism, accountability, and belief in love serve as a guiding light for Snake, helping him begin the journey towards becoming something more than just a soldier. Finally, we move on to Gray Fox, one of the most complex and haunting characters in Metal Gear Solid. His relationship with Snake is deeply layered, shifting from friend to adversary and back again. Gray Fox's presence in Metal Gear Solid serves as a reflection of Snake's inner turmoil, forcing him to confront the flawed logic of his worldview. Snake and Gray Fox were comrades on the battlefield, bound by mutual respect and a shared understanding of what it meant to be a soldier. Even when Fox became Snake's enemy, Snake never stopped seeing him as a friend. This twisted dynamic underscores one of Snake's core beliefs. Soldiers, regardless of which side they're on, are merely tools of larger forces. Gray Fox's transformation into the cyborg ninja shatters this perception. No longer a mere pawn, Fox has become something else entirely, a man searching for redemption and autonomy after a lifetime of being used. His struggle to reclaim his humanity mirrors Snake's own journey, making their confrontations deeply personal. Gray Fox's final moments in Metal Gear Solid are among the game's most poignant and transformative for Snake. As Fox sacrifices himself to save Snake, he delivers a powerful speech that encapsulates the game's theme of Gene and the battle between destiny and free will.
We're not tools of the government or anyone else. Fighting was the only thing I was good at. But at least I always fought for what I believed in.
This declaration is a direct challenge to everything Snake has accepted about his life. Gray Fox acknowledges his past as a tool of war, much like Snake, but he rejects the idea that this defines him. In his final act, Fox chooses to fight, not because of orders or programming, but because of his own convictions. For Snake, this moment is the final nail in the coffin of his old worldview. Gray Fox's sacrifice forces him to see that he, too, has a choice. He doesn't have to be a pawn of the government or a slave to his DNA. He can fight for something greater, or choose to stop fighting altogether. Gray Fox's final act is not just a moment of redemption for himself, it's a gift to Snake. It gives him the clarity and courage to break free from the chains of his DNA, his programming, and the endless cycle of violence he's been caught in. All of these characters, each wrestling with their own battles of identity, legacy, and purpose, come together to not only underscore Metal Gear Solid's central theme of Gene, but also to illuminate Snake's arc throughout the game. As Snake confronts the truth of his origins and the struggles of those around him, he moves beyond being a tool defined by his DNA to a man capable of choosing his own path, proving that while genetics may influence us, it is our choices, relationships, and convictions that ultimately shape who we become.